Sandy Says Read, and welcome to the channel. Today we are going to do something really cool, something fabulous. The birds in the background are excited about it too. We're going to do a deep review and contrast of Charlotte Bronte's Emma. That's right, we're going to look at a couple versions of Emma. Before we begin, I want to welcome you guys to subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you have clicked the notification icon so that you're notified each time I do random videos here on the channel. And go to the Bingo Baker website, which I will put in the drop-down box below, and generate your Sandy Says Read Bingo Baker card, because you know we are going to be saying all the phrases today during this video. This can be a long one, and we're probably going to say all these things. And as we say them, you will get to check these words and phrases off of the Bingo Baker card. Get the dopamine hit for that. Now, we are going to divide this into three parts. The first part is some Bronte facts with a look at Charlotte's 2 chapters of Emma, the 2 chapters that she wrote before she passed away. Then we're going to do part 2, which is a review and discussion of Emma Brown by Clare Boylan. Then we're going to do a deep dive and discussion of Emma by Charlotte Bronte and Another Lady. You guys might recall that here on the channel, we just recently did a review and discussion of Young Elizabeth Green by Constance Savery. We did that in preparation for discussing the review of Emma by Charlotte Bronte and Another Lady. I'll put a link to that in the drop-down box below so you can go look at that video if you wish. Now, before we jump into part 1 of this video, let me just address the elephant in the room. Yes, this video looks a little dark and foreboding, a little spooky for the Halloween season. I wasn't doing that on purpose. Maybe I should say, oh, that's with purpose, that's with intent. But no, you guys, that would be a lie. My ring light is working, but it is reflecting strangely off of my new glasses. Got a new prescription. You know, I got that prescription back in like, I don't know, July, August. I just recently ordered my new glasses with the new lenses. I thought I ordered lenses that would do nice things with reflective lights and computer screens and all that stuff. No, I could not get my glasses to stop reflecting the ring light stuff. It's a thing. You guys, you know I am technically challenged when it comes to the technical things for this channel. We just have to deal with it. It is what it is. If it gets to be too distracting, because I can see like the screen down here, I can see it out of the corner of my eye. If it gets to be too distracting and crazy, if the shadows get to be too much, I'll figure something out. But for now, let's dive into part 1 of our lengthy video today and talk about some Bronte facts. Okay, so why are we doing this video today? We're doing this discussion in time for the Jane Eyre anniversary on October 19th. Let me grab the Oxford Companion to the Brontes. This was compiled and put together by Christine Alexander and Margaret Smith. And look, there's very little glare because the ring light isn't working, isn't on. Okay, so on pages 268 and 269, we have Jane Eyre, an autobiography. It does go further than that, but we're going to focus on these 2 pages so we can talk a little bit about the lead up to the release of Jane Eyre. On 16th March, 1847, Charlotte began to make a fair copy of Jane Eyre. Early in August 1847, the professor received its 7th rejection. This time from Smith, Elder and Company, who courteously suggested that a 3-volume work would receive careful attention. So Charlotte completed her fair copy of Jane Eyre on 19th August and sent it off to them. And they did some looking at it. They were happy. Let's see. We have different editors looking at it. You guys, I'm trying not to just read through this entire thing for you. Don't know how many people would be excited. Let's see. In fact, Smith Elder eventually paid £500 for the 3-volume editions of Jane Eyre. Printing and proofreading went ahead without delay. By 24th September, when she thanked her publishers for punctuating the sheets in a more correct and rational way than her own, Charlotte had already been correcting proofs during her stay at Ellin Nussey's home in Brookroyd. from 9th to 23rd of September without revealing to Ellin the secret of what she had been writing. Okay, the proofs were completed at Haworth, and the novel was published in the customary 3 volumes on 19th October. Hooray. So that is why we're getting this video about Emma up in time for October 19th. We're celebrating all kinds of Bronte things. There's a method to my madness. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Emma and the 2 chapters, the fragment that Charlotte had put together, what she left for us. And we'll do that by starting in our Oxford Companion and going to page 181. The Emma entry. Should I read this whole entry for you guys or just a partial? Let's see how far we get. And I can always edit out what we don't want, right? Okay. Emma. The manuscript is dated 27th November, 1853. Charlotte Bronte's fragmentary commencement of a novel, left incomplete by her death in March of 1855. The 2 chapters of Emma were written later than the Willie Ellin fragments, and we're going to look at the Willie Ellin fragments as we get into the 2 novels, when we start talking about them. All right, let's see. The 2 chapters of Emma were written later than the Willie Ellin fragments, but they feature an urbane Mr. Ellin, who is probably associated with the earlier plot. This last sketch focuses on Miss Matilda Fitzgibbon, a motherless young pupil who attends an English boarding school where she is bullied by Miss Wilcox when the latter discovers Mr. Fitzgibbon has given a non-existent address and does not intend to pay his daughter's fees. The child and her circumstances are not dissimilar to material found in an early fragment relating to Ashworth, which describes Miss Percy, a pupil in Mrs. Turner's seminary at Kensington. Okay, so bereaved husband, Reverend A.B. Nichols, had allowed Elizabeth Gaskell to see Emma when she was gathering material for Charlotte's biography, published in 1857. When Gaskell later wished to add it to a proposed new edition of Life, to make the book more attractive and likely to sell, she told George Smith about the fragment of a tale she, Charlotte, had left. She was skeptical about obtaining Nichols' permission, so Smith wrote and obtained a surprisingly warm consent and offer by Nichols to transcribe the 20-page, much revised manuscript draft in pencil. The fragment was published in April 1860 in Smith's new Cornhill Magazine under the title The Last Sketch, and with an introduction by its editor, William Makepeace Thackery. Hold on, you guys. I'm starting to get a little bit emotional because I have read the introduction by William Makepeace Thackery. And the introduction is titled The Last Sketch, and it is lovely. Okay, back to our Emma entry. Both Mr. Nichols and Reverend Patrick Bronte were deeply moved by Thackeray's generous personal tribute to Charlotte, as were readers like myself. In a letter to George Smith, Mr. Nichols said how much he prized Emma as being the last thing of the kind written by the author. He also gave Smith a graphic description of how Charlotte had read him the manuscript in the winter of 1854, a description repeated by Thackeray in his introduction. On the suggestion of Nichols, the Cornhill text retained the deleted last page of the manuscript, where Mr. Ellin protects the distressed child, Matilda Fitzgibbon, but included several misreadings. There is something I wanted to address in this video. I didn't put it in my notes because I didn't know how I was going to feel about it, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. I purchased this little chapbook almost thing of Emma, the 2 chapters, the introduction by Thackeray, the 2 chapters of Emma. This is pretty obviously to me an AI generated stolen valor piece of crap, in my opinion. I went ahead and ordered it because this I felt comfortable writing in. I was able to mark this up and make notes and put, underlines and stars and notes in this. Okay. I felt comfortable writing in this because I'm pretty sure this was just AI generated, and the the publisher of it, I don't care that I'm marking up something they produced. Okay. But you can get the fragments of Emma in other places. You don't have to resort to giving money to AI publishers who steal things from other people. Okay. For example, and this is the part that is in my notes, the fragment of Emma is included in a few versions of The Professor. So if you go online and you want to get very old versions of The Professor, you can find Emma in its original state. For example, the Mershon Company publishers from Rahway, New Jersey, published the fragment in this version. You see, nice. This is The Professor, and that's basically what it looks like. And in here, yes, we have the fragment of Emma, the fragment of a story. Okay, see that is in there. So yes, this particular version, and I don't think this one tells us in the front matter the year that it was published. It's obviously pretty old. I mean, look at this. This is pretty old. Now, this version of The Professor, and you're not going to be able to see the detail on that, I'm sure, but this version of The Professor was published in 1907. So it's a little bit old, right? Okay, so 1907. This one, let me get that there where you can see the title page, right? This is from Smith, Elder and Company in London, 1907. And even though this one does not contain the fragment from Emma, it does have the poems of Curran, Ellin, and Acton Bell. And you just saw the title page. It's The Professor by Curran Bell. So this little book is precious to me. It is amazing and great. So even though the fragment of Emma is not in this particular one, there is great sentimental value to this book to me. Just everything about it is cool and wonderful. Olive Classics edition. This is from Collins Clear Type Press, London and Glasgow. This special edition, this does have, if I can get this out of here for you guys, this does have the Emma fragment and some poems in it. If I can put a little bookmark in there so that we can see the Emma fragment is in there. Okay, so why am I bothering to show you these special editions? Why am I bothering to tell you this? Well, because if you want to get a version of The Professor that has like some tales from Angria, the fragment of Emma, and some of the poems from Curran, Ellin, and Acton Bell, do your research, do your homework, look it up, to make sure that you are getting a version of The Professor that has these things in it. Not each version does. This is what I'm trying to say. So let's dive in and take a look at Charlotte's Emma. Let's look at these two chapters, this fragment that we have from her, and we'll start with the introduction from Thackery. And you guys, Charlotte Bronte had a great deal of respect for William Makepeace. She had a great deal of respect for him. She enjoyed his writing, and then she got to meet him. And when they met, I'm not going to say that their meeting went poorly, but Charlotte was good at speaking her mind. Okay, she was good at, she'd call you out on something if she didn't agree with something you were doing. And Mr. Thackery did not always portray women in a great and positive, fabulous light in his writings. And she was willing to call him out on it. When she went to London, she was not exactly thrilled with everything she saw there. She wasn't exactly thrilled with the way some elements of London society worked. And she called people out on it. Okay, she made her thoughts known. So the relationship between Thackery and Bronte, it was not strained, but it wasn't this, it wasn't a fabulous, comrades kind of relationship. Does that make sense? Okay. So when he wrote the introduction, he made mention of that, appreciated that in her. And on page 11, he says, New to the London world, she entered it with an independent, indomitable spirit of her own, and judged of contemporaries, and especially spied out arrogance or affectation with extraordinary keenness of vision. She was angry with her favorites if their conduct or conversation fell below her ideal. So he's talking about himself there, and he's saying, he's owning up to it. Okay. Often she seemed to me to be judging the London folk prematurely, but perhaps the city is rather angry at being judged. I fancied an austere little Joan of Arc marching in upon us and rebuking our easy lives, our easy morals. I thought that was very kind of him to point that out and to speak of it so kindly in such a friendly tone. Okay, but he does also give us some insight into, the evening when Charlotte shared the two chapters of Emma with her husband. And he writes, Thackery writes, one evening at the close of 1854, as Charlotte Nichols sat with her husband by the fire, listening to the howling of the wind about the house, she suddenly said to her husband, "If you had not been with me, I must have been writing now." She then ran upstairs and brought down and read aloud the beginning of a new tale. When she had finished, her husband remarked, "The critics will accuse you of repetition." She replied, "Oh, I shall alter that. I always begin 2 or 3 times before I can please myself." But it was not to be. We'll stop reading that part there. Oh my goodness. Then he finishes his introduction. We'll see if I can get through this for you guys. He finishes the introduction. He was working on Vanity Fair, and he was supposed to be getting Vanity Fair to his publisher when he read Jane Eyre, right? When Jane Eyre came to him. And this is how that went. We're going to try again. How well I remember the delight and wonder and pleasure with which I read Jane Eyre, sent to me by an author whose name and sex were then alike unknown to me, the strange fascinations of the book, and how with my own work pressing upon me, I could not, having taken the volumes up, lay them down until they were read through. Hundreds of those who, like myself, recognized and admired that masterwork of a great genius will look with a mournful interest and regard and curiosity upon this, the last fragmentary sketch from the noble hand which wrote Jane Eyre. We got through it that time. Okay, you guys, so that was the introduction to the 2 chapters that are Emma. And as we do in these reviews, let me give you the specs. All right, the first 2 chapters of Emma are written in first person, past tense, and it's in Mrs. Chalfont's point of view. That's kind of all the specs I give you for this. It's only 2 chapters. Okay. We have Fuchsia Lodge. That is the ladies' school where little Miss Matilda Fitzgibbon has been taken, where she has been left by her supposed father. And I'm wondering if Arthur saw a little bit of Villette in Fuchsia Lodge, like maybe he was seeing that happening there, because Fuchsia Lodge is run by these 3 sisters, the Wilcox sisters, who are older ladies. They're not really spinsters yet. They're not that old yet, but they're of age where they need to either get married or they're going to be considered old maids, right? That's the time that we're living in. So we have let's see, Fuchsia Lodge. It is about a mile from Mrs. Chalfont's house, and Miss Mabel Wilcox, she's the one who meets with Mr. Fitzgibbon. He is delivering his daughter Matilda, and let's go to pages 20 through 21 of this little fragment. And I've written in the margins here, Miss Mabel Wilcox is too desperate to ask enough questions, and that is a fact. Okay, she's so taken in by the apparel and the appearance of Mr. Fitzgibbon, and in the way he has dressed his daughter, and the fine carriage that they've come in, that she doesn't ask enough questions. Had Miss Wilcox's establishment boasted fuller ranks, Had she indeed entered well on that course of prosperity which in after years an undeviating attention to externals enabled her so triumphantly to realize, an early thought with her would have been to judge whether the acquisition now offered was likely to answer well as a show pupil. She would have instantly marked her look, dress, etc., and inferred her value from these indicia. In those anxious commencing times, however, Miss Wilcox could scarce afford herself the luxury of such appreciation. Okay, so she needed the money that this little girl was going to be bringing in. So yeah, she brought her in. Let's see, it was admitted then that there were vacancies in Fuchsia Lodge, that Miss Fitzgibbon could be received at once, that she was to learn all that the school prospectus proposed to teach, to be liable to every extra, in short, to be as expensive and consequently as profitable a pupil as any directress's heart could wish. All this was arranged as upon velvet, smoothly and liberally. Mr. Fitzgibbon showed in the transaction none of the hardness of the bargain-making man of business, and as little of the penurious anxiety of the straitened professional man. Miss Wilcox felt him to be quite the gentleman. Everything disposed her to be partially inclined towards the little girl whom he, on taking leave, formally committed to her guardianship. And as if no circumstance should be wanting to complete her happy impression, the address left written on a card served to fill up the measure of Miss Wilcox's satisfaction. Conway Fitzgibbon, Esquire, May Park, Midland County. That very day 3 decrees were passed in the newcomer's favor. First, that she was to be Miss Wilcox's bedfellow. Second, to sit next her at table. And third, to walk out with her. Okay, and pretty soon, Pretty soon we start to see that this little girl is just very meek, very mild, very quiet. She won't answer questions. She won't play with the other girls. She just keeps to herself. And it's just a little bit odd. And I wrote in the margins here, Charlotte is so snarky. Yeah. Are we up to that point yet? Yeah, we are. Okay, so there are already 3 students at this ladies' school at Fuchsia Lodge. And one of those students is named Diana. And Diana is not so thrilled about the fact that this other little girl has come in and apparently has money, therefore gets special treatment. And it says here, an ill-conditioned pupil who before coming to Fuchsia Lodge had passed a year under the care of certain old-fashioned Mrs. Sterling of Hartwood, and from them had picked up unpractical notions of justice, took it upon her to utter an opinion on this system of favoritism. The Mrs. Sterling, she injudiciously said, never distinguished any girl because she was richer or better dressed than the rest. Okay. She goes on to basically state her opinion. And I think it's just so clever and cute that Charlotte is snarky about it. And then we have the character of Mr. Ellin. Let's go to our Oxford Companion. My notes tell us to, on page 543, and look at Willie Ellin as Charlotte was envisioning him. He started out in The Professor. Okay, let's see, the beginning of an unfinished story in which Charlotte Bronte tried to revive the early chapters of The Professor, a novel which Smith Elder had refused to publish. Okay, the central portion of The Professor, which had been recast in Villette, and Charlotte was reluctant to abandon the remaining early theme of the rivalry of 2 brothers. Okay, so immediately after the publication of Villette, she wrote 3 fragments relating to Edward and Willie Ellin, each in pencil and first published in BC. Okay, you guys, let me go further down. Okay, the narrator is Ellin of Ellin Hall, probably the same person as the young child Willie Ellin in the story. He is an orphan, deprived of his position as a gentleman, and forced by his brutal elder brother Edward to become a shop apprentice. Okay, I want you to... Okay, first of all, just realize she was pulling stuff from her juvenilia. She was pulling stuff from, The Professor, from early writings. She was always working on her craft. Think back to the reviews we just did of Mr. Rochester. Do you remember doing Mr. Rochester by Sarah Shoemaker? Okay, we did that review. There was that brotherly rivalry happening again, because Sarah Shoemaker was pulling from Jane Eyre, where there was that sense of rivalry in Mr. Rochester, right? I mean, Edward Rochester's older brother and father treated him poorly in Jane Eyre. I mean, this concept is throughout Charlotte's writing. And I just love, I love that we can see that happening. Okay, you guys, I just dig it. I'm nerding out on camera. I'm sorry. Okay, so Lily Ellin has an older brother, Edward, in Charlotte's, in her milieu, in what she was writing, in her world building. He has this older brother, Edward, who is not kind to him, who treats him poorly. And in the fragments, we meet Mr. Ellin, and in the subsequent writings that Clare Boylan and Constance Savery put together, there is an older brother. There is this figure that is not kind to Mr. Ellin. There is some extra person in the background. It's more prevalent in one novel than the other. There's that extra person who causes strife, and Mr. Ellin is reduced to coming to our story. Shall I move on? Because we're not doing the reviews yet. I just want you to know it is so awesome and great that Charlotte was putting this character that she'd been working on, that she'd been molding into Emma. She was putting that character into this fragment. She was putting that character into this novel too. That makes me happy. Okay, so Mr. Ellin in chapter 1 of Emma, he goes to the school. He's visiting Mabel Wilcox. He's visiting the Wilcox sisters. And there is this idea that maybe he's going to become engaged to one of the sisters. This is an idea that's like floating around the township, right? Now, he has not made an overture of marriage to any one of the three sisters. That's not really on his mind. But rumors are going around. He sees little Miss Fitzgibbon, and he notices her and thinks, wow, the kid looks really unhappy. So that's where we are on pages 24 of this fragment. A favorite has no friends, and the observation of a gentleman who about this time called at the lodge and chanced to see Miss Fitzgibbon was, that child looks consummately unhappy. He was watching Miss Fitzgibbon as she walked by herself, fine and solitary, while her school fellows were merrily playing. Who is the miserable little wight? He asked. He was told her name and dignity. Wretched little soul, he repeated, and he watched her pace down the walk and back again, marching upright, her hands in her ermine muff, her fine pelisse showing a gay sheen to the winter's sun, her large leghorn hat shading such a face as fortunately had not its parallel on the premises. Wretched little soul, reiterated this gentleman. He opened the drawing-room window, watched the bearer of the muff till he caught her eye, and then summoned her with his finger. She came. He stooped his head down to her. She lifted her face up to him. Don't you play, little girl? No, sir. And it goes on with him basically meeting her and trying to find out, well, why don't you hang out with the other kids? And that's the end of chapter 1. In chapter 2 is when we get his name, and he is the beginning of chapter 2. You guys, he is the main character of at the beginning of chapter 2, and we get a description of him from Charlotte Bronte. And here's where things are just a little bit wacky weird. And I'm enthralled by this. I'm nerding out about this, and you guys can nerd out with me. Okay. Mr. Ellin, the gentleman mentioned in the last chapter, was a man who went where he liked. And being a gossiping, leisurely person, he liked to go almost anywhere. He could not be rich. He lived so quietly. And yet he must have had some money, for, without apparent profession, he continued to keep a house and a servant. He always spoke of himself as having once been a worker, but if so, that could not have been very long since, for he still looked far from old. Sometimes of an evening, under a little social conversational excitement, he would look quite young, but he was changeable in mood and complexion and expression, and had chameleon eyes, sometimes blue and merry, sometimes gray and dark, and anon green and gleaming. On the whole, he might be called a fair man, of average height, rather thin and rather wiry. He had not resided more than 2 years in the present neighborhood. His antecedents were unknown there. And on we go. All right. Someone, the rector in the town had introduced him. He found everywhere a prompt reception. And here we go down a little bit further. He always seemed to them very harmless and quiet, not always perhaps so perfectly unreserved and comprehensible as might be wished. He had a discomposing expression in his eye, and sometimes in conversation an ambiguous diction. but still, they believed he meant no harm. You guys, what an interesting way to describe this fellow, right? And how interesting that in this second chapter where we're meeting him, he does not like put to rest the rumors of calling on the Miss Wilcoxes, right? He doesn't put those rumors to rest. He lets them fester and he doesn't worry about it. He doesn't seem to care. And there comes a crisis moment in chapter 2 where Miss Wilcox realizes, oh my gosh, this little child probably isn't who we think she is. I'm probably not going to get paid. And she calls on Mr. Ellin to help her. She sends a letter to him. And when he receives the letter, he's like, okay, got it. I'll come and help you. She asks him to come immediately, urgently, to help her. And his response, the last injunction was in vain, for William Ellin did nothing in haste. He had no haste in him. He wondered anybody should be so foolish as to hurry. So he gets up from his breakfast table and he gets himself ready to go to Fuchsia Lodge to discuss with Miss Wilcox what it is that's disturbing her. And he's taking his time about it. Mr. Ellin very quietly finished his breakfast. Then, as it was a very fine December day, he carefully prepared himself for the cold, took his cane, and set out. And he's just like walking along, taking his time. He stops and leans against a tree to think for a little while. He's in no rush. I'm like, dude, move on. Yeah, he's, let's see. He made his journey as long as he could by going round through many fields and through winding, unfrequented lanes. Yeah. I've already started talking about Mr. Ellin because I couldn't help it. He's such an important character in what Charlotte wrote, and then in the 2 stories that we have from Clare Boylan and Constance Savery. He's a very important character. But in my notes, next we're going to go over the character list. Let's go back and look at Mrs. Chalfont. Okay, she is the widow who is telling the story. So you guys, she could have been Emma. Right? She could have been Emma. She could have been the main character. She's the one telling the story. So let's go to page 18 and let's meet Mrs. Chalfont. I married when I was very young. I lived for 15 years, a life which, whatever its trials, could not be called stagnant. Then for 5 years I was alone, and having no children, desolate. Lately fortune, by a somewhat curious turn of her wheel, placed in my way an interest and a companion. Okay, so this is Mrs. Chalfont. We learned that she was married in her earlier years, and she got married very young. And we're going to see that continued, discussed. That is going to play a pretty major role in both of the novels we review later. She's also very clear-headed, Mrs. Chalfont is. I mean, in one of the books, she's a little bit more of a feminist than the other, but she's very clear-headed. She thinks about her choices before making them. Okay. Then we have Miss Mabel Wilcox. She is around Mrs. Chalfont's age, as best I could tell in Charlotte's fragment. She seems to be the 3 sisters that run the school seem to be right around Mrs. Chalfont's age. We'll not call her naive, but she's financially desperate. Okay, she's financially desperate not to be cautious when Mr. Fitzgibbon shows up with little Matilda. Right? Let's see. I also wrote here, she's changeful. Miss Mabel Wilcox, she's changeful, in my opinion. And I say that because she's willing to take in this child, Matilda, and treat her better than the other students in her school, the other 3 students. She's willing to do that. She's willing to give her favors. And you guys, I mean, she really is treating her better than the other students just because she thinks this kid has money, just because she thinks this kid is going to be an heiress to her father's fortunes. Okay. She's doing this because she thinks she's going to gain something from it. And as soon as she finds out that she's not going to gain something from it, she turns. I mean, she turns on a dime and she's like, oh, how dare this kid try to trick me. we don't even know it's the kid's fault, but how dare this kid try to trick me? And she turns just instantly. There's, oh, okay. Let's go to page 35 and let's look at some of that happening. 35 of this little fragment booklet thing. Page 35. And we're looking at Miss Mabel Wilcox. She is very businesslike, very practical. She never in her life knew a refinement of feeling or of thought. She is entirely limited, respectable, and self-satisfied. This is Charlotte writing about her, and I like Charlotte describing her. Miss Wilcox is a very proper and decorous person, but she could not be delicate or modest because she is naturally destitute of sensitiveness. Her voice, when she speaks, has no vibration. Her face, no expression. Her manner, no emotion. Blush or tremor, she never knew. Do we have more of her? Okay, page 42. I love Charlotte's, well, you guys know I love Charlotte's writing, but I like it when she's getting kind of snarky, right? At page 42 of the fragment, we're almost to the end of chapter 2. We're almost to the end of the crisis moment that Charlotte has presented to us. We have the little girl, Matilda, who's being called on the carpet. Mabel Wilcox has figured out, hey, this kid is probably not who I thought she was. I'm probably not going to get paid. I need to figure out who she is and get to the bottom of this. She has called in Mr. Ellin to help her figure this out. And Mr. Ellin is not participating in questioning the child, but he's there. He's in the room and he's watching this unfold. And Miss Wilcox is trying to get information out of Matilda. Matilda is just flabbergasted. She doesn't know what to say. She's afraid. She's afraid. She doesn't know what to do. She's just kind of standing there trying not to faint. She fails, but she's trying not to faint. Oh, and this is Miss Wilcox speaking. Keep yourself still and reply, if you please, said Miss Wilcox, whom nobody should blame for lacking pity, because nature had not made her compassionate. What is your name? We know you have no right to that of Matilda Fitzgibbon. She gave no answer. And on we go. Then lower down. Okay, this is a poor Matilda. Further down, at last the culprit spoke. A low voice escaped her lips. Oh, my head, she cried, lifting her hands to her forehead. She staggered, but caught the door and did not fall. She's afraid. She's about to faint. She's having an emotional response to Miss Wilcox basically haranguing her to get information out of her. And Mr. Ellin is there to assist, and he does catch the child and helps her. And see, Mr. Ellin is our next character on the list. And we've already talked about him a little bit. Let's see, on page 27, did I already give you this information about him? Page 22. Yeah, I've already read for you the beginning of chapter 2, where we meet Mr. Ellin from Charlotte's pencil. We've already met him, and he is a conundrum, as far as I can tell. I mean, he seems to be a very good man. From Charlotte's point of view, he seems to be a good man. He's helping this child. He's looking at this kid and he's trying to figure out, okay, someone is taking advantage of this kid. Someone is using this kid. It's not the kid who's trying to pull the wool over our eyes. I mean, you can tell Mr. Ellin is figuring that out and he wants to help the kid. Okay, he's a good guy, right? But Charlotte has painted him as a chameleon. Like she said, he has chameleon eyes. Yeah. And had chameleon eyes, sometimes blue and merry, sometimes gray and dark, blah, 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 blah. And she gives him this character of a guy who goes to different gatherings and he always has a warm reception every gathering that he goes to, but his diction is changeful, right? And when he goes to the Mrs. Wilcox to visit with them, people in the town think he's going to propose to one of them, and he doesn't set those rumors at rest, but he has no interest. So yeah, he's a changeful character. What did I write here in my notes? We don't know for sure where he came from 2 years ago. So that is a secret. That is a mystery that Charlotte doesn't answer for us. She leaves that for future writers to give us information on. Let's see. Also, I wrote here, rumors say he's going to become engaged to one of the Wilcoxes, and he does nothing to refute that. He's very leisurely. I think I've already giving you, yeah, I've already read those passages for you, that he's very leisurely, but he's hinted at being good. Let's go to page 44 and see if I gave you that already. No, okay. He's hinted at being very good. Page 44, he's speaking to Miss Wilcox, and he says, "Say no more to her. Beware, or you will do more mischief than you think or wish. That kind of nature is very different from yours. It is not possible that you should like it, but let it alone. We will talk more on the subject tomorrow. Let me question her." So he is telling Miss Wilcox, leave Matilda alone. Let me question her tomorrow. He's basically helped put her into bed, tucked her in, and told Miss Wilcox, leave her alone. I'll question her tomorrow. I'll help you question her tomorrow when she's had a chance to rest. Her nature is not like yours. I will help you figure this out, but we got to keep the kids' health in mind, basically. And I wrote here, Mr. Ellin has an understanding of a tender-spirited child here. Like I wrote that, I surmised that from this paragraph, because I got from this paragraph that Charlotte was feeding us an idea that Mr. Ellin has helped a kid in the past. I got that feeling that Charlotte was giving us this insight into his character, that he has helped someone like this before. But we don't know, because that's the end of the chapter from Charlotte. And I wrote profound sadness, because that's all we have from Charlotte. That's it. Next up, we're going to talk about Emma Brown, a novel from the unfinished manuscript by Charlotte Bronte, and this was finished by Clare Boylan. This one I read after reading Emma by Charlotte and Constance Savery. So I read this one second. But we're going to talk about it first, because I enjoyed it less than I enjoyed Emma. I did enjoy it. It was okay. It was good. And we're going to talk about all the good and fabulousness of it. But I want to talk about it and get it sort of out of the way. I hope that doesn't sound too negative. I want to get done with it so that we can talk about and just basically nerd out on Emma by Charlotte and Constance Savery, because we're going to just nerd out on that one quite a bit. Okay, so the second part of this video, I know it's taken us a minute. Okay, we're doing all the Charlotte. The second part of this video is Emma Brown. The specs are Charlotte Bronte and Clare Boylan wrote this one. The copyright is 2003 by Viking Penguin Group. This particular version is 435 pages. It remains partly in first person point of view, past tense. There are moments where it feels third person. Well, there are moments where it are third person, but basically this is first person point of view, still in Mrs. Chalfont's point of view. You may have noticed that in Charlotte's fragment right here, we did not get Mrs. Chalfont's first name. I posit that she could have been Emma. But there you go. In this book, in Clare's book, her first name becomes Isabel. So it's Isabel Chalfont. Let me read for you the front cover flap of this, because we don't have it. The back cover is just testimonials. The front cover flap. And this is in reverse type, so bear with me. Oh, Emma Brown is the story of a young girl, Matilda, brought by her father to a small girls' school in provincial England. The school, Fuchsia Lodge, is foundering, so its headmistress is delighted to welcome a new pupil, especially one so elaborately dressed, with an apparently rich father who is quite the gentleman. But when the school term ends and it comes time to make arrangements for the Christmas holidays, Matilda's tuition goes unpaid, and the headmistress is shocked to find that the identity of the father, Conway Fitzgibbon, like the address he left behind, is a fiction. Before long, it becomes clear that the little heiress herself is not who she seemed. So who is the mysterious Matilda? When the girl refuses to reveal her true identity and then disappears, it falls to a local gentleman, Mr. Ellin, and Isabel Chalfont, the childless widow who briefly takes the girl in, to unravel the truth. in a journey that takes them from the drawing rooms of English country society to the grimy streets and back alleys of London's seamiest reaches. Emma Brown follows the search, first for Matilda's real identity, and then for the girl herself. Is there anything else back there? Okay. With pitch-perfect tone that is utterly true to Bronte's voice, Clare Boylan has created an authentic and captivating 19th century Victorian novel. Hang on to that, because yes, truth, but there's more that I want to add to that. Let's see. It is a melodramatic Dickinson portrait of both high and low life, and a wonderful guilty pleasure to be read in one large gulp. Boylan has seamlessly developed the sketch of a simple girl without a past into an exquisite portrait of a society with a shameful secret at its heart. And we're going to talk about an extra shameful secret that I don't think Clare intended, but we'll talk about that. Okay, with a shameful secret at its heart, a book that promises to be the literary discovery of the season. Okay, so let's dive in talking about this. I want to say that yes, this is a Victorian novel. It's like a Victorian novel, but there is a political novel in here too. Kind of the way Charlotte wrote Shirley, and Shirley seemed to be more of like a political novel and sort of a commentary on society. This book this one feels like a political commentary on London society. I mean, we have a whole swath of this book where we are in the underbelly of London, and it is not pretty. It's uncomfortable. It is dirty and ugh, okay? Ugh. Use that word for it. Let's see. What does we have here? On page 45. Okay, the age of Matilda in this book, in Emma Brown, we believe Matilda is no more than 12 or 13. We get that on page 45. Did I give us this? Hold, please, and I'll read it for you. The lass looked away, not abashed, as one might expect, but to conceal an expression of rebellion. Her interviewer, Mr. Ellin, felt aroused to vexation himself. You do nothing to improve your situation. Whatever misfortune has befallen you, it is surely not the fault of myself or Miss Wilcox. Poor Miss Wilcox went to particular lengths to be civil to you, and you repaid her benevolence with indifference. Could you not have made some small effort to respond? For the first time, the mysterious young person looked at him squarely, and he saw that the expression he had taken for sullenness was, at least in part, exhaustion. He observed as well that although her skin was sallow, her eyes were pretty, a smoky shade of gray that wistfully complemented the dark shadows underneath. To engage with that gaze was a disconcerting experience. He had an odd sensation of sighting in a pawn shop window a gem once stolen from himself. How should I have responded? In spite of her weariness, the girl spoke with spirit. Had I answered her flattery, I would have been party to a fraud. If I told the truth about myself, I would at once have rendered myself homeless. As to Miss Wilcox's kindness, it was as this room is today, all brightness and no warmth. Mr. Ellin almost smiled. While he paced, he had been rubbing his hands together. Miss Wilcox had not troubled to furnish the parlor with a fire for this appointment, and yet he had not been wholly conscious of discomfort, perhaps because his companion provided spark enough to compensate. Have you not been taught, said he, that a lady ought to use her sense to listen gracefully and hold her tongue intelligently? It would appear then, she rejoined, that I am not a lady. It struck him that it was a long time since he had shared such original female company. Pity it came in such a package. You guys, that package is 11 or 12 years old. On pages 45 and 46, we have Mr. Ellin not confronting Matilda, but questioning Matilda after Miss Wilcox has discovered that she is not who we think she is. After Miss Wilcox has discovered Mr. Fitzgibbon is a fraud, he is not coming back to get his kid. He's not going to pay for his kid to be studying at her school. Mr. Ellin is questioning her, and he's questioning her as an equal, almost as an older person. He's treating her like an older person. He's seeing her as an older person. We have words like aroused. Her interviewer felt aroused to vexation himself. And you might be thinking, Sandy, that's kind of a stretch, what you're about to imply here. No, ladies and gentlemen, it is not. It is not a stretch, because there are hints of, how can I say, PDF Ilia throughout this novel. I am not saying that Mr. Ellin participates in such activities. I am saying that Mr. Ellin is a little too intrigued by this package. We'll go on. We'll keep moving. I'm not going to dwell on that, but I want you to keep that in mind. Keep this time marker in mind when we come back to it at the end of the discussion of this book, because we have another moment at the end of the book that made me go, what? Okay, but we'll go on. We'll go on. All right. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about this. I'm sort of kind of going to give you a Sandy synopsis of Emma Brown as envisioned by Clare Boylan. I'm going to give you a kind of a Sandy synopsis of this. And talk you through some of the things that happened here. I will be spoiling it. I will give spoilers because this was published in 2003. It's been a hot minute. If people were going to read it, they probably have read it. Okay. So there's some spoilers coming up. Here we go. The first 2 chapters are verbatim Charlotte's 2 chapters of Emma. The fragment is here. And then chapter 3, we so very clearly diverge from Charlotte. So very clearly go into another writer's voice and another writer's part of the story. It was apparent that we had just left Charlotte behind and moved into another writer. I'm not saying that was bad, because Clare Boylan did a very nice job of getting that Victorian feel and that Victorian voice. I just knew when I read this one, I knew for a fact we had just left Charlotte's part and moved into Clare's part. I knew it. Okay, and that was chapter 3. And in chapter 3, we have Isabel Chalfont. We see her again, and she's explaining. She lives at Fox Clove. It's Clough. And you can pronounce the O-U-G-H word many different ways. So Fox Clove. We learned that she was born Isabel Cook, the daughter of a tailor with 4 more daughters. Okay, so she's born into a family, a working family, and they're getting by. But she was sent off to be a governess for the wealthy Cornhill family at Happen Heath. So Mrs. Alicia Cornhill, she's the mother of that, the matriarch of that house. She treats Isabel kindly at first, although she makes it clear there is a class separation. The older son, Finch Cornhill, he ends up forming an attachment with Isabel. It takes some time, but they figure out, oh, we love each other. Okay. The mother hates this. Of course she hates this. She sees there should be a class separation, and she doesn't want her highfalutin son to be messing around with the governess. And she certainly doesn't want him being engaged to a governess. Okay. Let's see. So the mother starts mistreating Isabel when she learns of this, and she teaches the 2 kids to mistreat Isabel also, which is sad. Okay. The mother forges a letter to Isabel's father. Isabel basically is like, look, I need to go home. I can't stand it here. Y'all are being mean to me. The kids are being mean to me. I need to go home. And she writes a letter to her father saying, I need to come home. I'm miserable here. I need to come home. Let me come home. The woman, Alicia Cornhill, she gets the letter before it can be posted. She gets the letter and writes a letter of her own to the father in Isabel's hand and signs Isabel's name to it. And basically it's, oh, Father, I'm so happy here. Everything is great. You needn't worry about a thing. Know that your daughter is happy. Thanks, Dad. Love ya. And sends this. Okay, forges Isabel's name and sends it. So when Isabel receives a letter back from her parents, she's thinking, okay, great. They're sending for me. I'm going to go home now. The letter back from her parents is basically, we're so thankful that you're happy there. It is a parent's best wish that their child should be happy in their profession. We're so thankful. And the money that you're sending home to us is so helpful. It is keeping us alive. It's keeping us going. Thank you so much. So poor Isabel is like, what? I sent them a letter saying I was miserable. I wanted to come home. This is not a response to that. And Alicia admits to her and says, oh, don't you worry. I rewrote your letter for you and I signed your name and I let them know that you're really happy here, because that's the kind of letter that a parent wants to receive, not that crap that you wrote. So basically, Alicia Cornhill is forging stuff and being terrible. And Isabel she feels trapped. She feels stuck at the Cornhill residence. And Finch has been sent off to study abroad. He can no longer be at the house because the mother is afraid these two are going to like elope. Some deeper attachment is going to happen. So she sends her son away. So Isabel is just trapped and alone and miserable. That's chapter 3. All right. By chapter 4, we go back to Fuchsia Lodge, where Mr. Ellin is interrogating Matilda the day after her collapse. So we go back to it. And that felt a little bit more like Charlotte's voice again. It felt like we were back in Charlotte's story again when we got back to chapter 4. Clare was writing. And we have, that disturbing passage, though, where Mr. Ellin he's questioning Matilda, but boy, it felt a little uncomfortable. And it didn't feel like something Charlotte would be writing for Mr. Ellin. But there you go. Mr. Ellin decides to take Matilda to Mrs. Chalfont's house for Christmas. I mean, it's Christmas time. It's December. The whole reason that this brouhaha happened was because, you guys, there is a gnat flying around this room. I don't think I got it. Okay. Anyway, the whole reason that this brouhaha came up is because Miss Wilcox had written to Conway Fitzgibbon saying, hey, what do you want me to do with Matilda for the holidays? Do you want to come and get her, or will she be staying here through the vacation? And his letter came back, or her letter came back. Like, there was no Conway Fitzgibbon. There was no May Park. It doesn't exist. So that's how the brouhaha happened. So it's Christmas time. It's time for the holidays. So Mr. Ellin gets permission from Miss Wilcox to take the little girl to Mrs. Chalfont to stay at her place at Foxclove. So there she is. Basically, the child her nerves are worn out, right? She has been hiding the fact that she is not this Matilda Fitzgibbon. She's been hiding the fact that this guy left her at the school. She's been hiding the fact that this is a persona she's been told to project. She's been hiding all of this, and she's stressed out. And now she's been found out. So that was stressful. And then Miss Wilcox was asking her all kinds of questions, which was stressful. Now she's gone to this other house, which is stressful. She's stressed out. And people are still asking her questions, even though Mr. Ellin is doing so carefully and kindly. She's still stressed out. She steals some money and runs away. So off she goes. This little girl is out of there. In this story, we learned that Isabel, she had returned to her family after being after the trauma she was suffering at Cornhill. At the Cornhills, she did return to her family because her mother was quite ill and she had to go back home. Her father sent for her. So she did return home and she's like, oh, thank God I'm home. This is great. I can just live here with you guys. That is wonderful. Being home with my family is great. I'm happy now. And her dad is like, well, there's a catch. What I want you to do is marry this guy, this merchant guy who lives in town. He's going to pay all of your mother's medical bills and give us some extra money if you marry him. So basically, Isabel got sold to this guy, and she's like, is he a nice guy? Yeah. So she has to leave off loving Finch Cornhill. She has to forget about Finch Cornhill and marry this guy instead, Mr. Chalfont. She has to marry Albert Chalfont. And she is 16 years old when she does this. We're going to page 84 to talk a little bit about Albert Chalfont and this this theme that I saw in this book that made me a little uncomfortable. So Isabel is talking to her father, and he's talking about Albert. And she says, "What, father?" There is a gentleman whose suits I tailor. He has been coming to me many years. He remembers you as a child and later as a young woman. Now keep in mind, she has been at the Cornhill estate for a couple of years. He remembers you as a child and later as a young woman. He was always impressed by your manner, but in recent years by your appearance too. She has just come home. Okay. I know no gentleman. I was unaccountably afraid. The sense of safety I had felt upon arriving home was now less absolute. He would like to know you. I did not come back to court, I protested. I came home to care for my family. And then in a voice so faint and tired that it would barely carry, he added, he would like to marry you. I could not suppress a cry of dismay. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, she's 16 years old. And on the next page, she says, I felt not 16, but 70 as I huddled close to the fire and put out my hands for comfort. You are right, I told my father. I did meet someone. I turned my face to him and forced a semblance of a smile. But he was not of my class, and there was never any prospect of a future. He has now gone abroad. He will marry some rich girl chosen by Mama. Now, what of your gentleman? If not rich, is he pleasant? So she is 16, and she's going to marry this guy who comes in to get his suits tailored by her father so that they can get money to pay for Mother's medical bills. I was uncomfortable with that, but it worked out. He was kind to her. Albert was kind to her, and he was happy to have a wife, and he would not let her work in the store. He wanted her to be in his home and not working. He didn't want her to have to work and to labor and to toil. He wanted her to be the wife, and she could cook if she wanted to. She could basically manage the house, not work in a store. He wanted her to be his happy wife. You guys. Okay. And so they lived together for some number of years. She's never able to have a child. Yeah. On it goes. In our story, Mabel Wilcox gives Matilda's fine clothes to Isabel Chalfont to repair and fix up for charity. And when Mrs. Chalfont distributes one of the dresses to a poor family, the girl who wears the dress to a fine festivity gathering, she finds a pricey brooch in the pocket. She recognizes that it belongs to the Wilcoxes. Matilda has already been accused of stealing that thing, but she's out of the picture. But now everyone's starting to realize, oh, hey, maybe Matilda didn't steal that thing. Maybe it was just misplaced. Oops. Yeah. Well, but Mr. Ellin, he is going to great lengths to learn who Matilda is, and he revisits his own old stomping grounds to figure this out. And this is where we see his older brother and family members who were not kind to him come into the story. We do get quite a bit of Mr. Ellin's background in between the scenes of Matilda in London. We do see her go to London, and we're no longer calling her Matilda. She is taking up the name Emma at this point. She is Emma in our story. In Emma Brown, she is the Emma. The little girl is. She uses the name Emma and has vague memories of a woman, possibly the mother Eliza Brown, selling her to traffickers as a child. Yeah, when she gets to London in search of her past, a woman named Miss Hammond double crosses her. Let's go to page 196 where that happens. Hold, please. Okay, so Miss Hammond smoothed her hair under her hat and pulled on her gloves. Although you are upset, you ought not to say things you will later regret. I shall leave you alone a while. Think very carefully about your situation. And think of this. Every person in this city profits by the disadvantage of some other. You will not twice encounter benevolence such as mine. So this Miss Hammond is saying that she's going to help Matilda. She's going to help her. But what she's going to help her with is getting into prostitution, basically. This young child. She's going to help this. Remember, she's like 11-ish, 12-ish, 13. This is how old she is. She's going to help this little kid get into prostitution. And she's telling her, you're not going to get a better offer than that. And I thought, I mean, when you read some of the lines that are given to some of these characters, I mean, Clare Boylan gives them some lines that, boy, they sound like they came from Charlotte's mouth. They sound like Charlotte would have said them, would have written them. And in fact, she probably did. I mean, I would need to go back and cross-reference with her letters. I mean, I've got her letters down here on the Charlotte, on the Bronte shelves down here. I've got her letters, but we'd have to cross-reference. It would take a lot of time to do. But listen, every person in this city profits by the disadvantage of some other. I mean, doesn't that just sound like something Charlotte would have said? She would have written to, like to Ellin. She would have written that to her friend. Yeah. Okay, anyway. All right, so that is what's happening to Emma. She's being basically taken advantage of everywhere she goes. Every time she gets a little bit of money, like a coin that she could use, somehow it gets taken from her. It gets stolen from her. It gets spent on something that she absolutely needs in that moment, like a cup of coffee or a cake, something to eat. But she can't seem to save up any money to get out of London, to get out of the situation she's in, until she does start working in like an inn's restaurant. She's serving tables. She does manage to save up some money there, but even that there's a problem with, and we'll get to that in a moment. We're still in the synopsis phase of this, you guys. We'll get to that in a moment. But everything that's happening to her is just awful. It's just constant awful. This book was full of just constant strife for Matilda Emma, for this child, okay? There is a guy named Arthur Curran who meets Emma like on the train on the way to London. He does seem at first like he's probably he is a pickpocket. He's probably going to be harmful, but he actually gives her some advice. And we do see him again in the book, and he's sort of this, I don't want to call him a guardian angel, but he is this character who shows up and can give a piece of advice when it is most needed, or who can show up and influence someone else to be helpful when it is most needed. So he is this almost guardian angel character who shows up and does something good. And I really like the fact that his name is Arthur. And I wonder, I mean, I'm sure that Clare named him Arthur for a reason, because he's just a good little guy who shows up, and he's Irish, okay. Okay, so Arthur Curran, he meets Emma, he gives her some advice. He was kindish to her. Emma refers to him as an eccentric Irishman. There's an old woman in the book who suggests they do a begging scheme together. When Emma is down on her luck, again, she suggests that they go a begging together. So let's go to page 203 and look at that. She's referred to as a crone, the old crone. She regards Emma balefully. And there's another statement here that I think came directly from Charlotte's mouth. I mean, it sounds like something Charlotte would say. Okay, the crone regarded her balefully. There is no straight road for a woman. For all that folks talk of honor and virtue, it's only theatricals for the female of the sex. Be she bride or beggar, she must bite her lip and hide her feelings and put on a very grand show for such as will offer her charity. Doesn't that sound like something Charlotte would have said? Emma wanted to argue, although her teeth chattered so that she could scarcely speak. She had seen for herself how young girls of good family were schooled to duplicity. Yet if women accepted it so, then were they not party to the conspiracy? There must be some who would strike out, whatever the cost. You've gone very queer and silent, the old lady complained. Not dead, are you? Which could be true. Yeah. Let's talk about Mr. Ellin in this book. Okay, he's going to great lengths to learn who Matilda is. We mentioned that. He's gone to his old stomping grounds to figure out who she might be, to basically follow some clues, some trails he's following up on. He does, run into people from his past. He's checking up on these things, and he's digging up old memories while he's doing that. So we're seeing his story too in this book. And at one point he goes to London, and he has friends in London. He's meeting with them on like the other side of London from where Emma is going through all of her trials and tribulations. On the other side of London, where people can sit down in a cafe and eat food and drink merrily, right? So he's with the upper crust of London, where Mr. Ellin is. And these people tell him, you're looking for this kid, you should probably give up, because children don't make it on their own in this city. Your kid is probably dead. She's not going to make it. So they're basically telling him, give up hope on this. And he doesn't want to give up hope. He wants to find this little girl. Hold on. Hold, please. I get further in my notes here. Okay, so while Emma is in London, she meets another little girl, a girl who's a little bit younger than her, a few years younger. And this child is named Jenny. Jenny, when we first meet her, is carrying around a little baby doll. We learn pretty quickly, it's not a baby doll. It is her dead baby brother that she's carrying around in the cold. And Emma makes the time to bury this child. They are being chased by the police because Emma, remember when Matilda was back at Foxclove, she was accused of stealing that brooch from the Wilcox sisters. She did steal money from Isabel Chalfont and then run away. So people are looking for her to get her back home and protect her, but they've gone to the police to get help. And when they went to the police, they're like, well, she did take some money. So the police are after her because she's wanted. They want to arrest her for stealing money, stealing the brooch. They want to get this child back for all the reasons. So her picture has been drawn and it is up around London. People are after her. She knows this. So she's trying to get away from the police. They're trying to get away from other beggars who want to use them because they're kids. They're trying to get away from these traffickers. They're trying to get away from this Miss Hammond and her group of people who want to use them as prostitutes. They're trying to get away from bad people. But Emma stops and takes the time to bury this baby. On one hand, that looks very kind. That's very good. Emma is a good kid. She's trying to help Jenny with closure here. But on the other hand, oh my word, we are in a crisis. We don't have time to stop and bury this child. We could have left this child at the church or at the workhouse hospital. Anyway, you guys, I was so frustrated with every side quest that was happening in London. It was frustrating me to no end. That we needed to find food. We needed to find shelter. We needed money. We needed help. And we're stopping to do these extra side quests that were driving me mad. Which, I cared very much about what happened to these two little girls. So kudos to Clare for making me care so much. That was good. Oh, let's see, in my notes. We're still in the synopsis, you guys. At one point, Emma works for a clergyman who considers her a slave until he wants to bed her. She sneaks out the window to get away from him, which is good. At another point, she's working in an inn's restaurant, and Jenny sleeps in the room upstairs until Jenny becomes so very ill that she has to be taken to the workhouse infirmary to try to heal her or let her die. Those are the options. She's probably going to die. Let's see. Jenny's taken to the workhouse infirmary, and Emma goes to find her. Okay, Emma leaves this job, she goes to find her. And when she gets there, she puts Jenny into a pram, a stroller. She puts her into a very young child. She puts her into a stroller and takes her to the exhibition that's going on there in London. Kind of like, think of it like the World's Fair. She takes her to this exhibition. They have to spend money to get in. That's the last of Emma's money. It's to get into this exhibition. She gets these tickets, and the tickets get stolen from them by these people who are pretending to be friends but aren't. Like I said, everything that looks like it's going to be good turns out bad. Everything is just bad. All these trials happening to Emma are just awful. But Arthur shows up. Arthur Curran. He shows up and he's like, the guy that won't let Jenny and Emma into the exhibition because their tickets have been stolen is basically being rude. And he's like, look, get out of line now, or I'm going to call the cops. I'm going to call the authorities. And Arthur steps up and he's like, look, obviously their tickets have been stolen from them. You saw these people messing with them. You saw that happen. So you need to let them in because you let the bad people go in with their tickets. So let them go in. And somehow this works. So they get to go into the exhibition. But while they're in there, people recognize, they recognize Emma's picture. They recognize her from the portrait that's been drawn of her. So people are trying to get her. These traffickers are trying to get her. Everyone's trying to get her. You guys, she gets abducted. The traffickers abduct her. The bad guys abduct her and leave Jenny there to die. This is London. This is the way it is pictured. It's awful. So we have this crisis moment where Emma awakens in this room that reminds her of the room she was in when the mother figure sold her off to traffickers in the beginning. Oh, it's awful. So basically we have this poor kid, this 13-year-old kid, having to act as the mother figure to Jenny, having to be the breadwinner for both of them throughout London. So the whole time she's in London, she's having to survive, and it is hard. It is difficult. It was a difficult novel to read because of the situations this 13-year-old was put in, because of all she had to go through, all the things she had to survive, and the way people wanted to just feed on her. Okay, the way adults wanted to use this 13-year-old kid. Keep in mind at the beginning, earlier in this review, when we were talking about Mr. Ellin, the way he saw, a woman in this little package, right? He was seeing something in this child, and it was a shame that it was in this little package. Everyone was trying to treat her as older than 13. Let me say it that way. All right. Basically from page, let's see, I wrote down here. She gets on the train at page 168 to go to London to look for this character who she believes was her mother, this Eliza Brown that she believes was her mom, who sold her to traffickers. She's going looking for Eliza Brown. She wants to find her mom. And we don't get done with London. We don't finish with London until page 409. Do I have 409 for you? Hold, please. Let me go to page 409. And I can kind of give you a quick look at, okay, so 409 is when she has been caught by those traffickers. She is in a room. She's tied up, and she basically overturns a candle. She bumps a table to overturn a candle while one of the traffickers is asleep so that she can... She's bumping the table to wake him up. She's trying to get help because the overturned candle is burning the place down. She's trying to wake him up. When he wakes up, he sees the room is on fire and he bolts, he runs, he leaves. And she is left, this 13-year-old who has been through all of this trauma so far, she is left bound in this room that is burning around her. And she thinks, I'm going to suffocate. I'm going to burn to death now. This is the end. This poor child. She does the firemen, the fireworkers is what I was about to say. The firemen, they do get her out. She survives this, thank goodness. And Mr. Ellin, Mr. Ellin found her in a hospital bed. He took a fright to see a ghostly thing, a small and solitary wraith, a face all bandaged, etc. So she survives, but my goodness. He calls her my brave girl, he uttered, for he had heard the story from the constable. Blah, 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 blah. Thank God your life has been spared, blah, blah, blah. He does take her back to Mrs. Chalfont. Now, Mrs. Chalfont has discovered that Finch Cornhill is alive and well and wanted to get back together with her. He never married anyone. And in, let's see, chapter 34, he is positioned as almost a saint for a while. So this saintliness of caring for children, of never having married, he stayed true to Mrs. Chalfont. He stayed true to her. He always thought that he would find her and marry her. He stayed true to her. He loved her. He truly did love her. And so he never wanted to find another love. Okay. So he has found her now and he wishes to marry her, and they're kind of courting, so to speak, while this search for Emma goes on. But there is this moment. We do have him like positioned as a saint until we get to page 374. We do have him just acting is sort of jealous of the man who is dead, Mr. Albert Chalfont. And he did pass away. That's why Mrs. Chalfont is a widow. He does get he's jealous of the fact that she married someone. He does understand she did it because her family needed that money. The family needed Isabel to marry Albert because Albert was going to help the family. There was an exchange, and Finch understands that, but obviously he's got a problem with it. And he says here, "And what of the man who owned your body in my absence? Did he also own your heart?" He spoke so crudely, it almost took my breath away. When I failed to answer, he raised his voice. "Did you love him too?" I tried to contain my alarm and to speak levelly. "He was my husband. He was kind to me. A portion of my affection was owed to him." "So, I do not have the whole of your heart. A portion of it was owed to your husband, a Shylock's measure to pay off your debts. Tell me now, how large was that allotment? Which part of your heart did you sever in exchange for your keep?" "The best part," that organ silently responded, but I knew better than to voice this truth. "The grateful part," I said, "the forbearing part. My husband taught me tolerance and generosity, attributes he owned in great measure. I cannot allow his memory less than that." A silence grew between us. I could not penetrate its density. I dared not even look at Finch. It was he, at last, who braved the vacuum. "Oh, Isa, dearest Isa, forgive my selfishness. If you will learn from me, then I will learn from you. Let us pledge ourselves to one another and begin to exorcise the past." Blah, 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 blah. Basically, he's got some issues. He has been portrayed kind of like a saint. I mean, Clare has portrayed him kind of saintly in his goodness and the good works that he's doing, but he's got some emotional issues there. He's got some problems with the fact that she did marry someone. She had to. But it all works out because he ends up dying. So she doesn't have to choose between Finch and Mr. Ellin, who's coming back with Emma. She doesn't have to choose between them. And in fact, she does not wish to choose a husband. In fact, a little bit in the future, Mr. Ellin comes a-calling, and he speaks with her about Finch Cornhill, the fact that Mr. Cornhill has passed, he is gone, and there's a discussion that is not, "Hey, let's get married," but pretty close, okay? And she's, Mrs. Chalfont is basically saying, "I'm not interested in getting married to anyone at this point. I already had a husband, and that was good enough. And now Finch is gone, and my heart is not ready to think about this any further." And Mr. Ellin is like, "Oh, okay, sounds good." And she basically asks about Miss Wilcox, and he says, "No, you might have stood it." Wait. He says, "Surely you don't mean to assign it to Miss Wilcox, his heart." And she says, "No, you might have stood a chance with her once, but I think she would elect to gamble in Lusher Prairie now that she has gone up in the world. I sure she has cast her bonnet in the direction of a widowed duke, blah, 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 blah. What then should I cast my head at the Zeus daughter?" And she says, Miss Isabel says, "Forget about her, sir. She is as dull as a cold potato." Emma refers to her as the Pomme Duchesse. Speaking of whom, how do you view Emma? "What do you mean? She is a remarkable girl." "I mean, do you consider her a child or a woman?" There was a moment's hesitation, a look of puzzlement which passed across his brow and gave me my answer. "She is not a woman," I supplied, "yet not a child either. In a very short space of time, she will have crossed the threshold from one to the other. You know, she is almost 16 now." So Mrs. Chalfont is suggesting that this 15-year-old who is almost 16 could be the object of his affection where marriage is concerned. "Why, of course I consider her a child," he protested. "I was a suitor to her mother. I am more than 20 years her senior." "My husband was more than 20 years my senior," I reminded him. "I do not envisage Emma as a flighty young woman susceptible to romantic wooing by spoony young men." He looked quite dazed at this, and lost to himself. He said nothing except softly to murmur her name. "My dear friend," I said, "we have answered one another. I cannot and shall not be your wife, but rest assured, Your good friend I shall always be. I thank you for your frankness, said he. I think at this moment I value that friendship more than anything. Yes, I do love Emma. I love her sharp brain and her bright spirit. She has more thorns than a wild rose, yet that wild rose is sweeter to me than any cultivated bloom. I swear I had not considered her affection in any but the purest light. The mere idea of her as a full-grown woman who would face me as an equal, that is pleasure enough. I could not begin to contemplate that she might ever belong to me. Blah, 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 blah. He does not marry her. Thank goodness. Mr. Ellin does not marry Emma. They just all are friends in the great scheme of friendship and things. In Clare Boylan's novel, Emma Brown is just friends with, they're all friends. Emma is her own spirited person, that wild rose. You guys, I just had some misgivings about that feeling of predatory nature on young girls in this novel. It just felt uncomfortable. But the story itself of this young girl figuring out who she was, figuring out the mystery of that, and getting to see Mr. Ellen's journey and who he was and how he was overcoming the stuff from his past was interesting. And I don't know, that the story was interesting. Like I said, this one was good, but I did not enjoy it as much as the one we're about to talk about. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to talk about Emma by Charlotte Bronte and Another Lady. The other lady in this scenario is Constance Savery. Now, we did just do a review of Young Elizabeth Green by Constance Savery. The purpose of reading and reviewing that book just a little bit ago was so we would have some knowledge of Constance before I started talking to you about her and her writing in this book. This book, you guys, I thoroughly enjoyed. I had a really good time reading Emma. I read this one before I read Emma Brown by Clare Boylan. I read this one first. And I think that might have colored my impression of Emma Brown because this one was just so stinking good. All right, so let's start by going over the specs. I'm going to tell you that in this one, Emma is not little Matilda, but she's also not Mrs. Chalfont. I know, I keep saying, Mrs. Chalfont could have been Emma since she's the main character. Okay, in this one, Emma is not Matilda. And I think that is, I wrote here, an interesting twist that makes the plot do extra family twists. I mean, we had some Wuthering Heights and Emily Bronte feeling happening in this one. I mean, we had a mix of Charlotte and Emily tied into the story that Constance put together for us in here. I loved that. Okay, let's do the specs. The specs are Emma by Charlotte Bronte and Another Lady, published in 1980. So this one was published well before Emma Brown by Clare Boylan, like well before, because that one was in 2003. This was 1980, published by J.M. Dent and Sons Limited out of London. This particular version is 202 pages. It's written in first-person point of view, past tense. Let me read for you the inside front flap. In the very last months before her death at the age of 39, at the height of her powers, Charlotte Bronte set the scene of a new novel called Emma. A child spiritually oppressed, a school run on shallow and mercenary principles, a brutish schoolmistress, a quiet observer of the injustice and cruelty. It contained the same preoccupations which elsewhere had called forth her most passionate and dramatic writing. Another Lady has now at last fulfilled the promise of that novel. Her lively powers of invention have worked the unfolding mystery of Charlotte Bronte's 2 opening chapters into an exciting and poignant story. The characters grow in vitality and complexity while remaining true in spirit, tone, and style to the original conception. The wanton havoc wrought by Emma in the life of Mrs. Chalfont, the narrator, is not the only proof of her ruthlessness. She plays a part, too, in the sufferings of the abandoned child, Martina. The affection which grows between Mrs. Chalfont and Martina out of their mutual distress illumines this story and Emma herself, with her inexplicable motives, her incomprehensible anger, and her darkness of soul, develops into a character of whom Charlotte Bronte would have been proud. Maybe that's why I liked it so much. I think that is accurate and true. Okay, first thing I loved was the smooth transition into the third chapter. Yes. So the first two chapters, as we did with Emma Brown, the first two chapters are Charlotte's first two chapters of Emma. Then we go into chapter 3, and it was a smooth flow, a smooth transition. As I read chapter 3, written by Constance Savery, it took a minute. It took me a minute. I was like, wait, this is not Charlotte's, is it? Charlotte only wrote the first two. Maybe, I mean, I was gaslighting myself when I was reading this book. I was thinking, well, wait a minute. Did we take some of Charlotte's chapters and put them in chapter 3? Are we still reading Charlotte's stuff? That's how smooth the transition was in this book. It was that nice. Okay. Let's see. I thought Constance had worked Charlotte's words into the third chapter. I wasn't sure we had finished Charlotte's part yet because Constance does such a good job of mimicking her voice and picking up the story. Okay. In this story, Mrs. Chalfont is Arminel. Her name is Arminel. I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly, but Arminel Chalfont. And her home is Silverlea Cottage. A little bit easier to pronounce in this book. So Silverlea Cottage. In this story, Matilda is 10 years old. Like, she turns 10 years old in February. So we refer to her as a February snowdrop from time to time. But she turns 10 in February after Christmas, after that Christmas holiday where Miss Wilcox is finding out, oh, wait, she's not who I think she is. Okay. All right. Let's see. And we learned that the man who left her at Fuchsia Lodge made her leave a little box of playthings at an inn along the road. On their way to Fuchsia Lodge, he made her leave a box of things behind. That little box of playthings had her initials inscribed on it. So yeah, we had to leave that there. Okay. Also in this story, Miss Wilcox finds a gold bracelet shaped like a snake, like a serpent, and it's got little ruby eyes, and it's got a name engraved on it. The name engraved on it is Harriet. And so we think maybe her name is Harriet. For like a minute we think that, but no. All right, so that is one of the things. And Miss Wilcox brings that to Silverlea Cottage at one point, and it's like this. Oh no, wait, that one says Emma, doesn't it? That one says Emma. The other one says Harriet. There are two bracelets. I'm getting confused, you guys. I'm getting ahead of myself. One of them is engraved with Harriet. One is engraved with Emma. The one engraved with Emma is the one that Miss Wilcox brings to Silverlea Cottage, because when she brings it to Silverlea Cottage and she's shaking it at Matilda, whose name is actually Martina, she's shaking it at her and she's saying, Emma, it says Emma. Your name is Emma, isn't it? You're Emma, Emma, Emma. And Mrs. Chalfont has like PTSD. In that moment. There's a reason, you guys. It's so well done. Okay, so this, yeah, that shaking of the bracelet, that yelling Emma at her brings back memories to Arminel. Let's see, page 30. Let's see if that is what's happening on page 30. I've got page 30 marked for us to go and look at. She turned on me. See here, she cried, showing the snake bracelet. It was pushed cleverly out of sight, but I found it engraved with her name, Emma. I shall insist on hearing the truth, whether in your house or out of it. Now, Emma, speak. I am not Emma, gasped the child. Not. She beat her hands together, sobbing and screaming. Miss Wilcox towered above her, implacable as ever. Short of taking our unwelcome visitor by the shoulders and forcibly ejecting her, I could do nothing save draw Matilda protectingly to me, while trying in vain to hush the strident sounds proceeding from the mouth of the girl's ex-preceptress. Powerless also was the child, who, seeing no way to free herself from her tormentor, cried out in partial surrender, Not Emma, I am Martina. And there she stopped, in terror and dismay. Not a word more would she utter. I think no power on earth could have forced her to reveal the surname. I felt the shaking and quivering of her frame, and with a resolution of which I had not believed myself capable, I bade Miss Wilcox leave us. She marched off, bracelet in hand, pale with anger, baffled when she thought victory was within her grasp. So we sit down and we learn that, okay, the child is not named Emma. Her name is Martina. So she was called Matilda Fitzgibbon. She's getting a lot of names in this book, okay? But we learned that, okay, so that the Emma of this story is not going to be this little girl. We learned that on page 30. We figured that out. But someone is named Emma, and someone had a bracelet with their name engraved on it, and somehow that bracelet came into this child's possession. And that is messing with Mrs. Chalfont, okay, with Arminelle Chalfont. It's kind of bugging her because she did know someone named Emma. And that Emma was awful. It was like this ruthless, horrible, terrible, bratty, spoiled, ridiculous child who grew up to be a terrible, ridiculous young woman. I mean, we're going to learn a lot about Emma, and she's not great. We learn about Emma through Arminelle's story. And like we did in the Emma Brown story, we learn about Mrs. Chalfont's background. Now, in Constance Savery's story, Arminelle Chalfont did marry, but she didn't marry because her family forced this on her. She didn't marry because she had to do it to get money. Okay, she did marry early, and she married a gentleman who was a widower. He had lost his wife, and so he had 4 children. We learned that Arminelle married Mr. Ashley Chalfont of Gruby Towers when she was 17, and he was 25 years older than her and widowed. He had 4 kids, Emma being the leader and instigator of trouble. So let's go to page 39 and look at that. And I want to mention also something, like she is the instigator of trouble. And when Mr. Chalfont and the new bride, Arminelle, are headed to Gruby Towers, when they are going from like the wedding ceremony and they're in their carriage headed to Gruby Towers, someone in another, actually he had to go do something. She's in the carriage alone with like some people that she doesn't know, but she's in this carriage headed to Gruby Towers, and another carriage like passes them on the road, and its driver is being like reckless, and there's like a girl in the carriage with the driver, and they're just all over the road, and they're driving recklessly, and they nearly run into this carriage of travelers. So Mrs. Chalfont is nearly run off the road on her way to her marriage home, okay, to Gruby Towers. You guys, that's so cool because, well, first of all, it's cool because Emma is in that carriage. She's the one who instigated the running away from Gruby Towers. She's in that carriage, and she's causing the upset. This happened in Young Elizabeth Green, which we just read and reviewed here on the channel. In Young Elizabeth Green, Elizabeth is on her way to her first governess job, and the young woman, the 15-year-old that she's going to be taking care of, Donata Deverell, and her cousin like nearly upset the carriage that she's in on her way to their home, the Deverell estate. And that I love the fact that we have that similarity happen. We have that same like almost upset the carriage thing on your way to your new life. I thought that was cool. It was clever. I liked that device being used again. I like that. The same way that, Charlotte has these little bits and pieces that she's pulling from her juvenilia, that she's pulling from the professor and from Villette to use in her 2 chapters of Emma, like Mr. Ellin. She's pulling these little pieces. Well, Constance Savery is pulling little pieces to add into the full book of Emma that she's written. And I liked that. I liked it a lot. Okay, moving on. What are we doing? Well, okay, page 39. We're meeting this Emma character at a young age. She's like 10 years old when Mr. Chalfont marries Arminelle. And this 10-year-old is like running the house. Oh, a groom ran forward to take charge of the horses. Opening doors revealed brightness and glow within. There was no sound of welcome in the babble of agitated voices that met us as we made our way into the vast hall. The assembled servants were not drawn up in line to greet us, but huddled together in groups. "Oh, sir," I heard on all sides. "Oh, sir, the children have run away." My husband's voice rang out above the hubbub. "Run away? Run away?" Okay, so apparently they did both go in the same carriage. I've got something screwed up in my head. Anyway, they're both here Again, the babble with one word predominant. Emma, Emma, Emma. Miss Emma led her brothers on, sir. They would never have thought of it, much less done it, but for her. She commanded Gregson to bring out the coach and drive them to their grandparents, but he refused flat, saying he would do nothing without your orders, sir. Miss Emma stamped her foot, sir, and called Mr. Gregson all manner of names. When Miss Emma found she could not get her way with Gregson, she ran off in a passion. We thought that was the end of the affair. But Miss Emma wasn't to be defeated. She stole down secretly to Undertaker Jones's place and bribed Billy to take out the funeral coach unknown to his father. Mr. Jones was almost beside himself when he found out what had happened. He came up here, trembling all over, to tell us what his lad had done. They left the house casual-like and went down to Pennyquick Lane. Goody Norkins saw them getting into the coach, but she reckoned it wasn't her place to stop them having a bit of fun. The truth, of course, she did not know, and when we found out, it was too late. They gabbled on like machines set in motion, blah, 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 blah. What happens here is the father, this new husband, Mr. Chalfont, is like, my kids have run away. Obviously, they don't like the fact that I just remarried. Okay, I'll let them live at their grandparents' house instead of here. He does not discipline these children. He does not ask this 10-year-old girl and her brothers to come back home. He decides it is better to just let them live at their grandparents' house, pitch a fit, stay there. And now Arminel is seen as the bad guy. Everyone in this village views her as this terrible little woman who has come into this house and kicked out the kids. Everyone thinks she kicked out these children. And Mr. Chalfont does nothing to fix it. So she wants to write a letter to the grandparents asking, hey, can I come see the kids? Can I come see you? Can we try to repair this? And Mr. Chalfont stops that letter from happening. He's like, no, don't write to them. Don't bother with this. Don't try. Just leave it alone. So she's married to this guy for 15 years. And in those 15 years, she doesn't really get to build a relationship with any of those kids. The youngest of those kids is named Guy. This young boy, I think he's like toddler age, okay? Like a toddler. She doesn't get to build a relationship with him, and he needs a mother figure. Word gets back to her that he needs a mother figure, but no one will let him come home to her. Emma's terrible. Okay. Moving on. What do I have in my notes? Mr. Chalfont lets his bratty kids live with his parents and doesn't let Arminel and the stepchildren interact. When Emma, the naughty thing, is 17, she gets engaged to a man of bad character. Arminel learns of it and tells Mr. Chalfont. It happens again in 2.5 years later, and Arminel stops it again. And Emma vows revenge for this. So let's go to pages 48 and 49. On 48 and 49, there is a lady, Mrs. Noble, she learns that Emma has gotten herself engaged to this man of bad character, of bad reputation. And she's like, maybe someone should do something about that before they get married. Mrs. Chalfont, Arminel, has to go to her husband and say, hey, your daughter is about to marry a guy she shouldn't be marrying. Let's see. Although grievously vexed and at first incredulous, Mr. Chalfont was grateful to me for putting him in possession of the facts. He went immediately to Parborough Hall to tell the grandparents what was afoot, and after a succession of stormy scenes, he and they succeeded in obliging Emma to renounce the engagement. I heard, without much heeding, a report that reached me by roundabout sources that she had vowed to take revenge on me for my share in her disappointment. Between 2 and 3 years later, the situation repeated itself in an even worse form, for this time I heard nothing until Emma was on the point of eloping with a young blackguard compared with whom her former suitor appeared as an angel of light. Her father was only just in time to avert the disaster. I cannot tell how she came to learn that I had once more been forced to play the spy and informer. All I know is that, her affections having been more deeply engaged than before, her threats against me were correspondingly more bitter, even though her father brought such cogent arguments to support his case that at last she was brought to submission. She promised obedience, and she kept her word. The threats I heeded not, for at that time I had my own secrets, unlooked for, because of joy, to shield me against words however hateful. Besides, thought I, what could she do that she had not already done? Okay, So she has this, Arminel is saying that she has this little secret. She's going to have a baby. Yeah, she was finally pregnant. Then she says here, the fire dimmed on my hearth. The carol singers had long since disappeared to their several homes, and all sound was hushed, save the wailing of the Christmas wind. I dared not dwell on what came next in my mournful history. For the 1000th time, I tried to drive away the ever-recurring superstitious fear that Emma had ill-wished me, for I nearly died at the birth of my child, and recovered only to be told that the babe had been stillborn. It was buried, poor nameless thing, in the family mausoleum, that place of dread, pale glimmering among the yew trees of that wind-swept, dank churchyard. With the quenching of my joy went all hope that my husband and I would be fully reconciled. Blah, 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 distant mutual courtesy, blah, 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 blah. She was going to name her baby Dorothea if it was a girl. And I forget the name that was going to be if it was a boy, but she wanted to name it Dorothea if it would be a boy. And there was a nurse there with her named Annie. And Annie knew this, and Annie knows her whole story. So when this little child, Martina, is at Arminel's house, Silverley Cottage, here in present day Christmas time, she's telling Martina the story of Arminel's past. And she's telling some of these things. And she tells her, yeah, she was going to have a baby, but it died. She was going to name it Dorothea. So when it comes time for Martina, it's hard not to call her Matilda. When it's time for Martina to go to her confirmation, she's like, I want to take the name Dorothea for my confirmation name because it was the name that you, Arminel, would have chosen for your baby. And I want to be as your child. So it's a very sweet thought. Let's see. 5 years after the stillborn incident, Arminel is sent to visit relatives so Mr. Chalfont could visit his children. His horse throws a shoe and he's killed. So that's when he dies. Arminel is basically told, don't bother coming home. Don't come to the funeral. Just stay where you are and we'll send you whatever things you need. So the kids don't even want her at the funeral of her husband. So yeah, Emma was a piece of work. Okay. Here we are in present day at Christmas time. Mr. Ellin buys that snake bracelet from Miss Wilcox. By purchasing it, he gives her money that she can then consider the payment for Matilda, Martina, being at the school. Martina hints at Arminel that Mr. Ellin has given Mrs. Chalfont treats that he doesn't give to other people. She's kind of hinting that, hey, he seems to like you, which is very nice. And then he basically asks for Arminel to care for Martina while they search out who she is and where she's come from and where that father figure went and how they might reunite her family if it's possible. Basically, he becomes like a private investigator, right? He's going to figure this out. He's going to find out what happened in her past and help her. And she has some parts of her past that she does not know, this little girl. Some parts of her past that she doesn't really understand. She's not real sure. Some questions she couldn't answer even if she wanted to. And she has been sworn to secrecy. There are parts of her story that she cannot tell because she's been told if she gives information, bad things could happen. Bad things could come of this. And so she has to keep the secrets. All right. Another mystery that we solve is that of who Mr. Ellin is. When he gives a book to Tina, it is inscribed with the initials W.R.E., which is William Roger Ellin. That's the author of the book. And she's quick, she's smart. She looks at that and she goes, wait a minute. That's you, isn't it? He's like, well, yeah, it is me. And Arminel is like, wait a minute, you're a poet? Yeah, I am. Well, no wonder you're able to hang out around here and have some money or whatever, because apparently back then poets made money. So he's, they figure out, okay, so you're an author. That's interesting. And yes, we learned a bit about that, but we also learned that he has an aunt who has left an estate to him, but he doesn't like to go to that estate. It belongs also to like a brother. There's family stuff going on in here in Mr. Ellin's past that is uncomfortable to him, and he needs to get past that and work through some of those issues too. We've got that going on in here as well. So we're learning about Mr. Ellin also in this story. We learned through Mr. Ellen's investigations that Conway Fitzgibbon got on a boat to New York, and that boat wrecked. So Fitzgibbon died, or at best we can tell, he died. He's out of the picture. So that is why Tina has not received a letter that she was expecting to receive. She's been told, Mr. Fitzgibbon, that's not his real name, he told her, keep a secret, don't tell anyone who you are, don't answer questions about yourself, wait until that letter comes. When that letter comes, it will have information in it that will clear you of wrongdoing. It will get us back on our feet, and you'll be able to tell people who you are. Until that letter comes, you're in danger, girl. And I'm in danger too. So don't say anything to anybody. So she's been waiting for that letter. The letter is never going to come. So she thinks, I'm going to be in danger forever. So we have to fix her mind, get her out of that thought. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so during a trip to the seaside, an event happens. Okay, so next door to Arminel, nearby her home, there is a family with some kids, and Martina is studying or learning, being homeschooled with a couple of the kids from that household too. So they're all learning together, and they're becoming friends and playmates, and they're building snowmen and doing things that kids do, right? So they're friends. So these two families, Arminel and Annie, the nurse, and a couple of servants, and Martina, go to the seaside with this family. So they're all at the seaside, and they're running around, being kids and playing and whatnot. And a woman on a horse comes up to one of the kids and is like, who's that little girl over there? And the kid misunderstands who she's pointing at. So, that's Bertha. Okay, whatever. And off this person goes. Well, the girl explains who the mysterious writer was, what she wanted. She wanted to know who this person was, and that's Bertha. And Arminel is like, ooh, I wonder if that mysterious writer was actually pointing at Martina and wanted to know who Martina was. That's interesting. That person might know something about Martina's past, and we should be able to figure something out about Martina's past if we could get to that writer. But I'm going to look like a crazy person if I jump on a horse and go chasing after that rider down, the seaside. I'm going to look crazy. I'll wait for Mr. Ellin to get here, and I'll talk to him and tell him what has transpired, and we'll figure this out. And Martina is actually a little bit worried about them doing that, and she doesn't want them to. And it turns out that maybe that rider was not a great person to be giving information to anyway, because shortly after this, Martina's abducted. A small closed carriage drew up outside the rectory gates, and its coachman brought a message, ostensibly from me to the governess, would she kindly permit Martina to leave her lessons early, as Mrs. Chalfont wished to take her on a shopping expedition to Barlton Market. Miss Spindler consenting, Tina skipped joyfully out, and was seen no more. She was not missed until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I had gone that morning to visit a friend whom I found alone, and so seriously ill that I could not leave her until a married daughter, already summoned, could arrive from her distant home. And as I had no means of communicating with Jane and Eliza, they were puzzled when neither Tina nor I returned home at noon, seeing Elizabeth and Anna seeking garden, green stuff, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, she's gone. She's out of there. The pursuit began in half an hour. Mr. Randolph and Mr. Cecil rode their own horses. Dr. Percy sent for his groom. Larry borrowed a nag from Farmer Giles, and the ordnance, blah, 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 blah. So everybody's out looking for her. Darkness closed in. The searchers came back, discouraged, no glimpse having been obtained of the missing vehicle, blah, blah, blah. Where, you will ask, was Mr. Ellin, that he did not take part, and that the chief part in the proceedings. Alas, it was known that he had gone to London, returning by way of Valancourt, where he had business connected with the estate. Blah, 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 blah. So they're out there looking for her. Shall I cut to the chase and just tell you everything that happens? So just jump into it. Basically, Lawrence and Guy Chalfont discover Arminel Chalfont living in Silverley Cottage. They do come across her at some point, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's you. And, you seem like such a nice lady, and we're so very sorry for the way we treated you when we were little kids. We're so very sorry for the way things turned out. And boy, you seem like such a nice lady, and you're so forgiving and kind. It's so different from the way Emma portrayed you. And they like have tea together, and they get along very well. And it's just lovely. And they're like, can we call you mother? Can you be that mother figure to us. And she's like, I would love that. That's what I always wanted. So they have this good relationship forming. And when Martina is gone, this little girl that she has been caring for, they're like, wow, that seems really sad. And we would like to help you find her. And that name Martina sounds familiar to us. We knew a little girl named Martina. Yeah, they knew a little girl named Martina because there's a family near where Groovy Towers is. There's a family, the Dursley family. Harriet and Timon Dursley have a little girl named Martina. So Martina Dursley is their child. And these two parents, they had been arguing, and the woman, the Harriet, she had been killed. Oops. So Timon and Martina disappeared. They're gone, and people have been looking for them. Also, Timon supposedly had like a lot of debts that he had racked up, and I don't know if he had an affair with a wealthy woman. There's something with a wealthy woman going on that was of concern. Like, I don't know if he had like defrauded her or he's having an affair with her. I don't remember now. There was a wealthy woman involved, and if that came to light, that was going to be a problem, and it was coming to light now that he was gone. Okay, so Timon Dursley and his daughter Martina Dursley are missing. So we're putting the pieces together. We're figuring out this is Martina. This is our Martina. And so where's Timon? Well, he was obviously this Conway Fitzgibbon who is now missing, dead in the ocean. Okay, so he's gone. Well, then where is Martina? Someone has taken Martina. We need to figure out who, and we need to get her back. Well, it turns out Martina has been like abducted and taken over to France. She was taken to a convent and like, handed to some nuns to be taken care of. Like, here's an orphan, take care of her. The person who did that was Emma, because Emma is horrible. But Emma wasn't necessarily doing that to be mean to Mrs. Chalfont. She was doing that out of fear. Emma, you guys, this was so well done. I mean, my gosh. Emma had taken little Martina, this little baby. She had taken this child and had given this child to her friend, Harriet Dursley. She had given this child to Harriet Dursley at the child's birth. You have just put this together, right? You've put this together. When Armanel gave birth, she was told the child was stillborn. Many people believed the child was stillborn. There were things going on in the household, and Armanel was quite ill and in need of medical help. So it was easy for people to say, oh, the child is stillborn, and no one like double check. So Mr. Chalfont gave the child to Emma and said, take care of the burial. Well, Emma was like, this child's not dead, and took the child to her friend Harriet, who was not able to have children, and said, here, this child is for you. So Harriet and Timon bundled the child up and went on like a vacation for a year, came back with their baby and had a baby, and everyone believed they had a baby. Yeah, that's how that happened. So Martina really is Armanel Chalfont's baby, really is her daughter. It's a happy, lovely, wonderful ending. We just have to go find her. Okay, so we have to go find her. And when they do, they get Emma to confess. And Emma's like, well, I did abduct her and she's in this convent. So they go and get her. And oh, yeah. So we bring her back home. And that's lovely. Constance Savery did a fantastic job of weaving this tale and putting it together and making the pieces come together and having Emma be on the continent when she needed to be on the continent, and having an excuse to be there and having an excuse to come back when she came back. It was perfect. Everything, it was so well put together. I don't know how you can find this book except like on Etsy or from people like secondhand selling it, like someone selling off their car. I looked again to see where you could find it, because I highly recommend this book. I highly recommend it as a wonderful, fabulous book to read. If you can find it. Page 165. You fully believe, as you're reading this, as you're getting through it, you fully believe that Emma is the mother of this child. You're starting to believe that. You don't, as I was reading through, I mean, you might think, okay, yeah, the stillborn baby, of course the baby was not stillborn. Of course that is Martina. You, in hindsight, of course. But as you're reading through it, No, it's so cleverly dropped in, and the fact that the child died is says with such assurance that you don't. I wasn't ready for the child to be Armanel's child. I was ready for the child to be Emma's child. I seriously believed that Emma was going to be the mom and that Emma was going to somehow legally get possession of Martina and break everyone's heart doing so. You guys, that's the way this was written. That's how well Constance set this up. I fully believe, and I was mad. As I was reading this, I was like so upset and so angry. I was like, okay, who is going to kill Emma? Who is going to murder this terrible girl so that she can't take possession of her child? Or how are we going to get this into the courts? I mean, we're up to page 165. We don't have that much room left. I was like, oh my gosh, how are we going to have a trial? We need to just murder her, flat out shoot her. We didn't have to, but listen to this. All right, page 164. It sounded so reasonable, such a confirmation of my intangible fears. Had there, then, been no kidnapping in the strict sense of the word? Was Emma merely asserting her right to do what she would with her own? Would she, if challenged, claim Martina again? I was in despair. On went Mr. Ellin's level tones. But against this theory, we have to set Mr. Dearsley's laughter, his strong affirmation, his so-called dying oath, that Martina was not, as she had feared, Miss Chalfont's child. Of course she wasn't, growled Lawrence. Silly little idiot. What possessed her to think it? It's inconceivable. I know the best and the worst of Emma. If Dearsley and a dozen others had sworn to the contrary, I'd not have believed it of Emma, nor would Guy. And neither do I, said Mr. Ellin. What we're thinking here is that Emma and Timon Dearsley had had an affair and had had this child, and then Emma had handed it over to Harriet, right? That's what we're thinking. Makes perfect sense. It's within it's within her character to have done that. We're so afraid that's what's happened. The dread, the overpowering dread, was lifted from my mind. Though all else was dark to me, one thing was clear. Emma had not the supreme claim to Martina. But Mr. Ellin was speaking again. Mr. Ellin continued. Mr. Lawrence Chalfont cannot recall when or how he first heard someone say that Martina must be an adopted daughter, since everybody knew that Mrs. Dearsley could never have a child. He did not give the idle rumor another thought till today, when a single sentence in Mrs. Moriarty's letter made him wonder whether the same rumor had reached his grandmother. He was present during a visit Mrs. Tidmarsh paid to Parborough Hall, in the course of which she observed, apropos of nothing in particular, that the little Dursley was oddly like Guy, as she first remembered him, a small boy in petticoats. Mrs. Grandison, showing no sign of discomposure, replied that she had not observed any resemblance. After the visitor had departed, she observed with uncommon tartness that some people were very clever at detecting likenesses where none existed. But the likeness did exist, whether or not Mrs. Grandison noticed it. Mr. Lawrence Chalfont saw it clearly when I brought Tina into the hall tonight. And if I am not mistaken, you saw it also, Mrs. Chalfont. I said with difficulty, there is a resemblance to the portraits of Guy in the picture gallery at Gruby Towers, painted at 7 and 10 years old. I have always been haunted by a likeness that I failed to trace. It must have been a marked likeness, as it was noticed by one of Miss Wilcox's pupils when Guy first rode into Clinton St. James. What, then, are we to make of Mrs. Dearsley's "you have a better right to it than I," when she bestowed the snake bracelet on Martina? It indicates a relationship of some sort, though not necessarily that of mother and daughter. And so we go through here and we figure out all these clues that have been leading us to believe that Emma was Martina's mother have actually been leading us to Mrs. Chalfont is Tina's mother. And yay, that is wonderful and great. Okay. So Emma took Armanel's baby, which had been pronounced dead, but was really totally fine. And she wrapped up a book in a blanket and put that in the mausoleum, in the cemetery area in the mausoleum. So the guys go to that area, they pull that out and thought there's a book and things. So we have proof. Yeah. you guys, I'm going to tell you this. Emma by Charlotte Bronte and Another Lady is a fantastic, wonderful, great mystery, thriller, adventure novel. Yes, it's a Victorian novel talking about, you know, the society and the, yeah, it's great. It's wonderful. I can highly recommend it if you can find it. And if you can find this book, I recommend that you do and read through it and enjoy it the way I did. Yes, I just spoiled the ending for you, but I mean, as you read through and you see those clues piling up and piling up and piling up, you're just like, oh my gosh, Emma's her mom. Emma's going to lay claim to her. Emma's terrible. Someone murder Emma. I want you guys to know that I very much enjoyed visiting this fragment of Charlotte Bronte's, of looking at these 2 chapters that she had written there toward the end of her life, and just seeing what she had put together, and then seeing the way these 2 authors envisioned the story going. I enjoyed that journey. I hope that you have enjoyed the journey with me. I know that this has been random and chaotic. That's kind of the way we do things here. If you enjoy this random chaos, thumbs up. And please subscribe to the channel, because there's always random chaos going on here. That's just the way I do things. And I love it when I can apply it to the Brontes. I want to ask you guys out there, if you have any authors that have passed on but have left behind fragments or unfinished tales, like perhaps Tolkien. I mean, are there any authors out there who have left behind unfinished tales that you have then examined, or that you have seen other authors complete? Are there any things like that that you have enjoyed, that you have like gone down the rabbit hole and seen like the different ways that authors interpret those pieces, those fragments, those bits and parts, those unfinished tales? Tell me about it. Let's talk about it in the comments below, because this is wonderful and fun to nerd out on. I am so glad that I read these 2 books. I'm so glad that I picked this one up years and years ago, because I can no longer find it anywhere. And that is a shame. I think everyone should have access to Emma by Charlotte Bronte and Another Lady, because it is fantastic. And it forced me to figure out who Constance Savery is and look into more of her works. I want to welcome you guys to subscribe to the channel, thumbs up, because this was a lot of really cool stuff that we went over.